Okay, Des, thanks very much. So the film we're doing is about the inner city of Waterford and people growing up, and also about the entertainment scene of Waterford. So could you start off with your own childhood, maybe? Just tell us a bit about your own background.
Right, sure. I was born nearly 81 years ago in Bellevue Terrace in Waterford on John's Hill. And, well, what do I say then? Went to school in St. Declan's National School. After that, then we moved over to De La Salle College, and as it happens, I became one of what they now refer to as the 49ers, which are the students. We were in St. Patrick's College on Newtown, just opposite De La Salle, and then in 1947, De La Salle College became open to teach, not just school teachers, but to teach everyone. So in 1949, we moved in as I think I was in fifth year at that stage, so a couple of years in the De La Salle College, which entitled me to be called a 49er. And after that then, I suppose when we finished school first...
But just go back to your parents first.
My father died when I was 8. He used to be, he himself was a musician, and he was manager of the Regal Cinema and the Theatre Royal downstairs. For the Breen family. And he was also played in the orchestra in the Coliseum in the days when music was put background to the silent films and that. He was a timpanist, so after he died we had to get rid of, tubular bells, xylophones, timpani drums, a huge lot of stuff went. I would have loved had they stayed around and I had grown up just to play them all, but anyway I didn't. Anyway, so
were you conscious of his musical tradition when you were a child?
Oh yeah, we were, because the whole Manahan family were all his brothers. Bill Manahan had, we could say, a nationally famous orchestra, so that anybody having a function, even in great rooms like this, would have first definitely gone to see was the Manahan Orchestra available to have your hunt ball or whatever it was at the time. He did that. Then Tom Manahan, he was a baritone, and he used to sing the baritone roles in the Opera Society, the Waterford Grand Opera Society. Obviously then you had Paddy Manahan, who was Anna's father, and Paddy was, well, of course most of us Manahans were all 5'2" or 5'2.5" if you wanted to be very tall. But Paddy Manahan then, Anna's father, would have been playing the parts that I ended up playing, comedy roles and things in the musicals. And so he was that way. John Manahan was also a singer. So all of the Manahan family, they were probably the boring entertainment of Waterford. They were probably full of themselves, like all of us, big-headed. We do this and we do that, we supply. But anyway, they were very talented, the whole family. So, but that music tradition would have been there. But then my mother wasn't of that tradition, and she liked music, but she wouldn't have pushed me on to continue in that vein. In those days, I think you're heading for a good solid job now. A nice job in the bank at £10 a week would have been the ambition,
But would there always been sing-songs in the house or piano in the house?
Yes, my sister was a very, very good musician. She learned classically, properly, and she learned to do it. I as it happens, I tried to go to have lessons, and after the first lesson, the teacher who had thought my sister was a great pupil and hoped I would follow in that footstep. But no, I sat down and I played a piece such, what should she say now? I played that. I said, I'm able to play that. And he said to me, where are you on the music? And I pointed to something. He closed it and he handed it to me and he said, now, don't waste your mother's money. So he didn't teach me, and that was the end of my teaching career. So I never learned the piano, but the piano was always in the house, and I'd always heard my sister playing it, and tunes would stick in my ear. But let's be very honest, I do regret not learning the piano, because what I play is my way of playing. But I can't do very fast runs or things like that because my fingers were never taught to do those things. So I just made it up myself as I went along. And it suited me then fine for the type of music I got involved in, playing for, as you said, sing songs at house parties, something like that. It was grand. whatever was the tune of the day, I was able to play it. And later years then in school, whereas I wasn't the best footballer or the best hurler, when the game was over, I could sit down at the piano and all the lads would gather around and we'd sing whatever was the pop tune of the day, you know. So that was the fun. That was how I got on at that. So that really was, I don't know, I suppose it was the way I was going to be going always. Now, when I did leave school, mind you, I had to get a normal job. I went to work in the glass factory, and I was in the office there, and my job was to do working at the hours by the foreign blowers, because they were paid on a different rate to the workers, the local lads. And at that time, it was only foreign blowers who were blowing. They were teaching the young fellas at the time, but we hadn't any Irish lads ready then. So I stayed in that for a couple of years, but then my business head clicked in and I decided water at Crystal had no future.
You were ahead of your time.
So I was way ahead of my time. It took them about 40 years before they folded. I would have retired on a big pension had I stayed there. But no, I didn't. I decided to go off on that. And eventually then I did various different jobs. But always trying to head, like the first job in Crystal was, I think it was £2, 10 shillings a week, which was a kind of a standard wage then. You know, you can see then why £10 a week in the bank was thought of as wonderful to get in on that. But it didn't happen. And I was never mathematically brilliant in terms of passing exams with any great results and things. I just liked what I could do. And what I found easy to do was the music, or as it turned out on stage in school plays, was no problem. I never was shy. I could get up and do. Funnily enough, talking about being shy, if you ask me now to sell this piano to somebody for £1, I'd be too embarrassed or too shy to do it in case they said no. You know, I was never any good in outside. I'll do anything on a stage or sitting at a piano or something. It doesn't bother me. But even to this day, I would be no good to go forward. You know, my wife would hate sending me for a drink at the bar, because I'd go up to the bar and I'd be, "That's all right, you can go on there." And I didn't want to say, "Please, can I have some service?" I'll just wait until he finally looks down and sees me. So, you know, I don't push myself enough. And I never did, which again is a fault, because had I pushed myself on, I may have gone further in the theatrical line, you know, whether it is professionally or abroad or anywhere like that, I don't know. I just didn't do it. And I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I stayed stuck in Waterford then. Not stuck, but stayed in Waterford. And as I got involved in everything, but the beginning of my career, if you like, in theatre was, we were in St. Declan's School, and I would have been about, 9 or 10 at the time. And I can remember two men from the De La Salle Musical Society coming in, looking for children to be in the senior production of the Vagabond King, which was being put on at that time. They wanted kids running around the stage and just for a little short scene. So a few of us who were little boy sopranos at the time were picked, and we were full of ourselves. You know, we were the boys who were picked amongst the whole class, you know. So when it came to being on stage anyway, it's a story of the Gypsy Baron, or at least of the Vagabond King, is a bit of a Robin Hood, you know. He stole from the rich and gave to the poor, and we little children were the poor. So we go and begging from him, and at one stage I'm at his knees begging for money, and he gets fed up and he says, "Clear them off," you know. And I literally get picked up and thrown across stage. So my talent was that I was the smallest and the lightest. Not that I was the best actor or singer, just dump them.
Oh, was that in the Theatre Royal?
That was in the Theatre Royal, yeah.
And that was your first time on stage?
That was my first time on stage. That would, 40, about 1941 or 2, I suppose. First time on that stage. We had done our little shows in school, those little things we done all the time. And again, they never bothered us. All the kids from any age on, we were good. Once I was on stage, I didn't mind. But then I'd come off stage and I would go back into my little quiet self again. And that even people would come up and say, "Oh, Des, you were great." And I'd you know. I'd nearly hide behind my mother like that. Just, I never had the courage to say, yeah, I was. I'd never do anything like that.
And what was your first part that you remember as a proper part?
Gosh, I don't know. Well, I suppose the Merry Widow may have been one of the very first ones De La Salle Society did way back. And Sean Traynor played the part of the Baron, and I played his minder, Niegas. And the reason I mentioned that particular show is that that was the first time I played Niegas. The next time we did the show, I played the part of the Baron. And over my career then, I have done that show 13 times all over the country, you know. It's just a part that people knew. And when they were putting on a show, you might get a phone call from Cork, are you available? Or a call down from Dublin to come and do it. So it was lovely. You were seen doing a part. When they saw me doing it down here, the people in Dublin booked me. When the people in Cork saw the show in Dublin, they booked me. And then consequently from then on, I joined the Irish Operatic Repertory Company in Cork, and I was about 16 years with them, doing different shows all the time. And while I was down there then, the Kinsale Opera crowd asked me also to perform with them, and they did their shows in the Everyman Theatre. So I was in the Opera House one time, the Everyman in the other. And then in the shows in Dublin then, the Glasnevin Musical Society booked me to do shows, and they did their shows in the Concert Hall. And then after a while they moved into the Gaiety. And subsequently then we did shows in the Gaiety, and then the Cork operatic crowd, we moved up to the Olympia in Dublin, and we did Me and My Girl on a tour there. And then the Jim Malloy production started in Dublin, and then they booked me to do various shows, Fiddler on the Roof, this one we're doing here this week, West Side Story, that was done up there as well, and the Strauss one. So I've done them all, like, you know. I don't know what really, I've covered everything, I'd say, from Grand Opera. We did La Bohème in Cork in Italian, and I don't have a word of Italian. I had to be taught phonetically every word and what the meaning of it was. And one of the funny occasions was the conductor who had come over from England realized I hadn't a clue of Italian, but he said, you just watch me and I'll tell you when to come in. You know, when they finish talking, you'll, you know, come in. But on one occasion, the bass, Collini, didn't know, he got it wrong. So the conductor musically gave me the beck and I came in. So anybody who could speak Italian at that time would realize that I was answering a question that hadn't been asked. I answered the question, he asked the question, so I was gone ahead of him the whole way through. But I mean, I'm sure 10 people in the whole lot of the Opera House in Cork would have recognised that.
So, I mean, have you made a living then, working professionally?
Yeah, but like all of that, it's not. It's only you're resting more than you're acting. You know, your shows go on. In Ireland, the best running shows, you won't get 2 weeks out of them. You know, even in Cork, they'll tell you they figure they have about, I don't know, what is it now? Is it 15,000? No, 5. There's 5,000 at the time that I finished down there. 5,000 people who will go to Grand Opera or Light Opera musicals, we'll say. So whether you run that show for 2 weeks or 1 week, those 5,000 will cram in for the 1 week, or they'll spread it out over. In other words, you don't earn any more money, but you pay more for the theatre. And I know that company folded after 16 years, and the people who ran it, they made nothing out of it. But in the meantime, we all got proper wages, as you know, proper equity wages right through the whole thing. So that was good.
A song from music or something from music or something, just before we continue on. Go on. Just a little ditty.
Just trying to think of it, yeah. I didn't realise I'd have to sing, and I haven't. If the voice is still there, the thing from the Mikado, Titwillow. Remember that one? On a tree by a river, a little Tom Tit sang willow, titwillow, titwillow. And I said to him, Dickie Bird, why do you sit singing willow, titwillow, titwillow?
Is it he, just a pink-legged birdie, I cried, or a rather tough worm in your little inside? With a shake of his poor little head, he replied, oh, willow, titwillow, titwillow. Now he slapped at his chest as he sat on that bough, singing willow, titwillow, titwillow, and a cold perspiration bespangled his brow. Oh, willow, titwillow, titwillow. Now he sobbed and he sighed, and a gurgle he gave. Then he plunged himself into the billowy wave, and an echo arose from the suicide's grave. Oh, willow, titwillow, titwillow. Now I feel that as sure as I'm sure that my name isn't Willow, titwillow, titwillow. That was blighted affection that made him exclaim, oh, willow, titwillow, titwillow. And if you remain callous and obdurate, I shall perish as he did, and you will know why. Though I shall probably exclaim as I die, oh, willow, titwillow, titwillow. And that little one is from the Mikado. Again, that's a lovely show I've done many, many times. The Gilbert and Sullivan ones are great, but unfortunately, the audience for them are dying off. They're my age group and moving on, and it's slowly
and
finding.
just on that, just because Waterford has a great tradition for musical theatre. Like, where does that come from? In your opinion?
Honestly, I don't know. We all talk about it and that. We have definitely a huge tradition in Tops of the Town. There's no denying that. We did come up with the greatest thing of all then, which was the Festival of Light Opera. Now, that basically, whoever organised it, and the idea was great because the talent that we had in the town at the time wouldn't have been anywhere near the quality of talent that we brought over from England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland at the time. Because, as I've explained often, it was only then, which would have been 1959, wasn't it, I think, the first festival. It was only then we really saw how a whole company works together on stage, not just the principals. You know, it's easy enough to come over with good principals and then have a bunch of people standing on stage just singing. But for the first time we saw every member on the stage was acting. You know, they weren't, it's sad to say about our own choruses at the time, but you could honestly say that a lot of them were on stage, and while they were on stage, they were looking out into the audience, and you knew they were saying to their fellow beside them, oh, look, so-and-so is standing in the balcony, or so-and-so is sitting on there, and so-and-so is there. What they didn't realize, of course, is that the moment you do anything like that on stage, every member of the audience picks you out straight away. They can pick it out of that. But it was just watching them and realizing, it's not just good enough to have good principals on the stage. You have to have everything good. And eventually then that evolved, and that helped us to say, well, we're not going to do that anymore. Let's face it, look what these people did when they came over. We're going to challenge that. So that got us going in the musical societies. Now that was, we'll say, separate from the Tops, totally different. The Tops were more or less working on, they would watch television and they would watch the good shows coming across from England, good shows on television on England, and you saw the fantastic dancers they had there and the wonderful comedy and the way they could run one show into another. So we developed two lots of talent, we'll say. The musical societies developed the proper way to put a show on, the proper way to make every member of that chorus act, and if they didn't act, you got rid of them. Now, this was our problem long ago. There were people who would always be, sure, he's always in the society, let him in this business, but that wouldn't have been tolerated when he wasn't good enough. And you had to have very tough decisions to be made. Right, these people are no good, they're not helping the show. And it became obvious that unless you did that, you weren't going to get on in competition. I mean, it would be wonderful for our own local thing, but if you wanted to compete, you had to be better. So we learned that on the musical side. And then on the top side, then we learned, to begin with, we learned then when we had such a huge wealth of natural talent local talent, that it was great that they came up. And whereas we'll say on the musicals, we'd all be trying to have nice voices and nice accents. The fact that you could then put on your Tops of the Town with your local accent and be fabulously funny and amusing and that. And you didn't have to look for a person who could speak beautifully or do something like that. The talent they had there showed out, and we came up with terrific talent then and built on it. And then, Waterford then became the leading group in the Tops in that their work on it, and they were the first to get going with the whole thing. It was just a lovely evolution of different talents. Now, the two talents is very seldom mixed. You rarely got people from, say, the musical societies to go into the Tops, only if they were, as the Tops became, more commercial, that they were hired in. And that kind of, in a way, ruined a certain amount of the Tops. Our Tops started with, I think we had 14 groups in Waterford, and it finished with one group in Waterford Crystal, you see. And it all happened that, I suppose, the turnover would have been at the time when John Player came along and they dangled the carrot in front of us and said, the winning 2 shows will be on television. Now suddenly, you can't wear this costume on television, get rid of that. We'll hire a good one from England, or we'll hire something from somewhere else, or we'll get Nomac, Blonde McCann, or some of the gang here to make better ones and, do everything. And suddenly we all decided that. And then we'll say, I'll tell you what, we'll get this man from the Clover Meads show, and we'll get this one from the Dockers, and we'll get this one from the Foundry. And they started to build up teams, and eventually then the teams would have their best man or their best woman or their best group, say, taken from them. They'd fade away. So the group started to go down and down. And as we became more, I suppose, we were really sort of wrapped up in our own little worlds, really competitive and that. And I can remember on one occasion here, in the early stages, I was with the Banks and Finance show at the time. I was their musical director, and we had done a very good show, but we didn't even get into the quarterfinals, and we were sitting outside. And I can remember one of the lads sitting on the bonnet of a car, and he was in tears. We had a great show. They were better, And it was that time you took it that seriously, and you were so wound up in it, and you worked so hard, but you never even got to the next stage. So later on then in years, as we got better and did get into local finals, and maybe then on to quarterfinals and semi-finals, and finally on to the winning, at least onto the final stage in Dublin. But, it was just an evolution. And while all that was happening then, some great people were coming out of it, the likes of Denny Corcoran. His imagination of what he built and created the whole thing. It was just, you think of the Ballyhassig group now. If they went on stage now, there'd be more riots from...
Very on PC.
Exactly, very on PC. So, it was just fabulous, and their natural talent was terrific. Davy Sutton and the boys, they were just marvellous. So, what ideas they came up with then as it went along, it just gave us all a poke in the kick in the backside, say, get on with it and start doing it.
Just to jump a little bit to another era, the show band era.
Show band era, yeah. Well, we had a band at the time called the Rhythm Kings. Now, just to begin with, I had bought a guitar. My friend Eamon Phelan had bought drums. Vincent O'Neill, another pal of mine, had bought a clarinet. And Brendan Boyer had bought a trombone. And we met together up in Eamon's house on Patrick Street just before he got married. He had getting the house ready, so it was a nice empty house for us to practice in. And none of us were any good. We were totally good. The boy on the clarinet decided he wanted to play classical music, so he left to go and study classical music. Brendan decided that trombone he didn't like too much, so he said he wanted to go down to the Olympia and sing with the Jimmy Fardy band at the time, which had Cayley and Old Time every Tuesday. So Brendan used to be singing mostly in the Old Time section, and eventually he started to sing stuff that wasn't quite old time, a little more modern, and of course the crowd started to gather, and that was the end of the Cayley Tuesday nights. History was made, yeah. And at that time, I can well remember,
when we were started our own band then, the Rhythm Kings, and we were playing good music, as we called it. You know, we had the proper lineup of the trumpet, trombone, clarinet, saxophone, drums, bass, guitar, all that stuff, banjo. Lovely, good sound of the boys sitting down, reading the music and playing it. Lovely dance music and everything else. But the boys, Brendan and the lads, they were standing up and singing, and the crowds were enjoying it, and we were dull. Lovely if you wanted to just dance, but we weren't getting them, you know. And then the boys, the Royal Show Band decided they were going to go professional, and we were so ridiculous. You know, they won't make it, they won't last. Giving up good jobs to go professional, rubbish. They're still going. So our judgment was as good as it was when I was in Waterford Crystal. I decided they had no future.
But it was very big at the time. I mean, someone said to me that there was 11 bands on the road.
Oh yeah, it was huge. Yeah, we had. Yeah, I can't remember the names of the Blue Aces, and there was just crowd. They travelled a lot. That was the one thing that put us off eventually. Working and coming home, say, on a Sunday night in the broad daylight, and knowing that you had to just get home and then go into work, having played, say, up in Naas. And the dances in Naas now would have been the farthest that we would have gone. And they used to go on till 4 o'clock in the morning. You had to finish at 4. And then by the time you tidied up all the gear and everything else, it was 7 o'clock by the time you got home here. And we didn't have the motorway either, so in those days. So it was, you know, it was just too tough. We weren't able for it. So the big band broke up, and then we formed just what we would refer to as a hotel group, a quartet. And we used to do the local hotels, Tramore, Dunmore East, Waterford, and that no travelling home in half an hour and all that business. And that suited us better then. But that was it was a good sideline to have, along with your wages to have. I mean, what you were earning was very small in those days, but at the same time, it was extra, you know, and it was good fun. But the dance bands then went, and we kind of faded away. I ended up playing more or less on my own. For a while, myself and the drummer Eamon Phelan, we used to do a gig up in New Ross every Saturday night, playing for dinner dances, and that was nice. And then that faded away too. Tastes change and things, you know. And piano music on its own. This was before the good electric keyboards came out, where you had everything thrown in onto one machine. So you couldn't get a good piano. You know, you were. I can remember when we were playing in the Rhythm Kings, our pianist, I used to play the guitar then, and our pianist was Pascal Kennedy. And poor Pascal, you'd pity him, because we'd get to a ballroom and you'd have to look at this heap of rubbish that was offered as a piano. It was, you know, it could be a half tone down on concert pitch, which meant that instead of Pascal couldn't play in C that the tune was in, because the instruments were in that. So he would have to try and transpose it all up into C sharp or D flat or whatever. You know, it was always difficult on him. He always had the hardest job. And I know nowadays Pascal is still playing like myself, but he uses a keyboard. So it's always in tune. He has no headaches from that.
And I suppose we should mention too your cousin Anna.
Oh, well, Anna was great, yeah. Anna went off. Anna was exactly 10 years older than me. So when she went off, and she was in the business and doing well, you could never say they were doing well. They were, technically, as an actress, she was doing brilliantly. But the money wasn't there, the business wasn't there. But I think it was in 1957, it was, that she became very famous for all the wrong reasons, if you like. That was the year the play The Rose Tattoo was on in Dublin, and that was the year that the police came in and raided it and closed them down and put the director in jail.
It was over a condom, wasn't it?
It was over, yeah, it was suggested that a condom was dropped on the stage. And for all you young people, a condom was not available in Ireland in those years gone by. So the up in arms people, how disgusting, disgraceful, all the other sort of thing, you know, about it. And this huge row came on. Basically what it turned out to be, it was the church and John Charles McQuaid and the Knights of Columbanus and that group. It was De Valera and the state not wanting to be pushed around by John Charles McQuaid, but still not wanting to lose votes.
and you had it's a tremendous mix-up of things. But in the long run, the Rose Tattoo play was only a reason for them to have a go at each other in politics and in every other way. But it did ruin the Little Pike Theatre. It did ruin the marriage between the director and his wife. It ruined a lot of things. But it did great work for Anna insofar as the critics come from London. Charles Hobson, I think it was, came over and said it was the most brilliant performance he had ever seen, you know, for her. So she got great.
A launching pad.
Yeah, a launching pad out of that as
I mean,
well.
even though Anna would be quite famous and all that, but she never really made a fortune.
No, never. Ollie, she made nothing, if you like. Every time she made some money, we'll say, she would put it into the house in William Street. She had bought another house quite close to the house in Lombard Street here where they were born. And, you know, when she'd make a few bob, they'd add some more to it. And then she and her two brothers came back there and lived there. But as you say, she never made money, but the big thing was for her a couple of lucky strokes. One was the Red Kettle put on Happy Birthday Dear Alice, and that turned out to be a superb success for Anna and for the whole company. And as they were on tour, then she was seen on tour, and then someone nice realised, oh, she would do a lovely job for us. So, of course, Druid and what's their director? We'll think of them. Anyway, she spotted her and said, yes, she would be perfect for the part in The Beauty Queen of Lebanon, which toured the world, ending up on Broadway. Then she won the Tony Award, and suddenly, that's, you know, the stars were
and then
there.
she also got onto RT as well, on the TV.
Everything, yeah. We see, she herself, yeah, and even though she was in Fair City, all that, she would be. I was not so upset, but when people say, "Oh, Anna, I saw you on the television. You were marvelous," you know, her whole life was on stage, you know, and nobody remembered that. They just remembered the television bit. And she would love to have said, "Do you realise I've been 50, 60 years on a stage?" And, you know, she did great television work on that show that was done in, that little comedy one, Me Mammy,
Yes.
with Milo O'Shea. It was done in London, but it was irreverent and it wasn't shown in Ireland. So we had our censorship board, was still very strong in those days. So that, but no, Anna did always want me to go on stage, but at that time, I don't know, I was married with children, so you had to think of a job and wages.
Absolutely.
And a living.
It's a job
You just couldn't risk it. So eventually then we did do a play together, and we toured Ireland with that one. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was, you know, to be with her on stage was lovely. We did one, we did a kind of a musical lunchtime entertainment in Dublin, in Stephen's Green there for one season all right together. And then a few years later then we did the A Miracle in Ballymore, that play, and we toured Ireland with that. So that was a good fun work together there. But I know she was a lovely actress in that. She could be very cross, mind you, at times.
She was famous for it.
Famous for that. Little outbursts now and then. But no, she was a lovely actress in that. And once again, she didn't tolerate people who weren't putting 100% into what they were doing. And that used to really upset her, you know. That we're all a bit that way. I'm a bit too easygoing. My attitude is that they're doing their best, which is not good enough. But
I mean, the town always had a very strong arts scene, didn't it? I mean, you go way back. I mean, it was always something.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads. I mean, there is loads of talent. The way I look on this is that there is probably loads of talent in every town. You know, it's just to rake it up and find it and give them something to work on, give them the stage to work on. The Red Kettle idea was great for local talent and everything else, and for getting the kids involved and all of that. That's gone now, we'll say. Okay, Little Red Kettle is still going in one form or another. The theatre schools in town, like you have them, that helps kids at least to get up and go on stage. You know, they need to all we're told, I suppose. Stick to your studies as well. Don't think that because you're a good actor or actress on stage here in shows and everybody says you're marvellous in this, don't let that give you the idea, I'm going to go straight over to London now and join one of the big schools over there and then I'm going to do this and that. Because as I explained before, here, even myself, we're a big fish in a small pond. But you go to those places, you're a little fish in an ocean, and it's very difficult. So, to be any real honest advice you give to any person who would ask you, what should they do? Say, finish your school first, get yourself something so that if it doesn't work out as an actor, that you have something to fall back on, some little education.
Des, will you finish off with a tune for us?
To think of it now, what shall I do? Let's see now. Can't even think of the one that was on my mind now a while ago. I tried to woo my wife with this. Before she was my wife. They try to tell us we're too young, too young to really be in love. They say that love's a word we've only heard, but can't begin to know the meaning of. And yet we're not too young to know this love will last for years may go. And then someday they may recall we were not too young.